Chapter 59:38. Bewitching nodded slightly and said, "Yes, this is not a difficult switch to turn on." It was not difficult to find the switch, which meant that the test might not be simple. Bailey Hongzhuang had also expected this. Thinking about what she had gone through in the Darkness Shrine, she still couldn't help but feel scared. She wondered if the situation in the Brilliant Shrine was the same. If it was no different from experiencing the feeling of being on the verge of death. After noticing the change in her expression, Di Beichun guessed what she was thinking. He chuckled and said, "Don't worry, it might not be the same." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. She also felt that the pain was too terrifying. However, even if it was the same situation, she would be willing to experience it again as long as she could improve herself. This kind of opportunity was something that most people could only wish for. "Ling Sun, let's go and take a look." Xiao So was a little depressed when she saw that Di Beichun and the rest had discovered the mechanism. But at this moment, she was more curious about what kind of treasure the pool that had suddenly appeared was. Qing Devil also stopped copying when he saw this. To him, the contents on the wall were also extremely precious treasures. The records on the scrolls that he had seen before were not complete, but according to his judgment, the contents were extremely precious. On second thought, he thought that since the Statue of Light was so impressive, how could the things that appeared here be simple? Bailey Hongzhuang walked to the pool. The pool was extremely large, and there would be no problem even if all the cultivators present were to enter it. It was more like a lake than a pool. Everyone gathered outside the pool, and the dense fog drifted away, giving them a refreshing feeling. Standing in front of the pool, everyone couldn't help but feel a sense of yearning. Just standing outside and feeling the dense fog made them feel refreshed. If they could enter the pool, the feeling would be even more obvious. However, no one dared to take the initiative to take that step. Everyone knew how dangerous the inheritance was on a daily basis. The more attractive a treasure looked, the more dangerous it was. If something went wrong after taking a step, no one dared to bear the consequences. At least for now, no one was willing to be the first to eat crabs. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun slowly came to the front of the pool, and everyone's eyes unconsciously fell on them. Ever since they opened the Light Palace, Di Beichun and Lin Li had unknowingly become the backbone of everyone. This pool of water is so clear. It looks like there's a very strong power inside. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the pool of water and felt a sense of yearning. Di Beichun looked at the pool of water, then slowly bent down and sensed it. There is indeed a very powerful force here. According to my judgment, there shouldn't be any danger. After going to the Darkness Shrine, he had gained a better understanding of darkness and light. Since the Temple of Light was a symbol of light, it was unlikely that they would do anything to take someone's life. These two statues seemed to be existences that could deliver all living beings from torment. Such a thing was obviously unlikely to happen. Di Xiaofeng looked around at everyone who was looking at Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang. He was speechless. These guys were completely treating his brother and sister-in-law as the leaders. Chapter 59:39. Beichun, ignore them. We're not in a hurry anyway. Di Xiaofeng nudged Di Beichun with his arm, but he didn't hide his voice. Once this was said, everyone's expression became awkward. They didn't know how they knew about Di Beichun and Nangongwuk. Most importantly, since they could open the door and find the mechanism here, they felt that they should be the ones to solve this problem. Nangong Yuqing's face turned red. He thought about how he usually looked down on Di Beichun, but now he was relying on Di Beichun. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's protective appearance, Di Beichun smiled. He originally didn't plan on testing the water. He never did this kind of business where he would suffer a loss. After hearing Di Xiaofeng's words, everyone was too embarrassed to count on Di Beichun and Nangongwuk. They even withdrew their gazes. Looking at the pool filled with mist, it was like a delicious cake in everyone's eyes. However, they wanted to know if this cake was poisonous or not. After a while, a cultivator mustered up his courage and walked into the pool. After feeling the energy in the pool, the man couldn't help but exclaim, "Such dense spirit energy." Is there any problem? No problem. Everyone else couldn't help but walk into the pool after seeing that the man was safe and sound. For a moment, the sound of water splashing could be heard. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also walked into the pool. Feeling the energy in the pool, they understood that cultivating here was faster than before. This kind of cultivation speed was faster than cultivating with high-grade spirit stones. It was simply heaven. Everyone's face was filled with joy. If they could cultivate here for a few years, who would be their match when they went out? Looking at the huge pool, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly took a few steps forward. The entire pool was square. Everyone had walked in from one side, so it was very crowded when they gathered together. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but the other cultivators also had the same idea. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen kept moving forward. In fact, they were also curious about what was on the other side of the pool. Beichen, the purpose of the Temple of Light seems to be to help everyone cultivate. It doesn't feel like a test. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. The pool water reminded her of the pool water in her master's inheritance. Similarly, it was filled with extremely dense essence energy. It was just that the energy here was slightly more abundant. This would be of great help to cultivators. It was just that they didn't know where the assessment point was. Di Beichen's eyes were deep as she pondered. Perhaps the test is on the other side of the pool. At this moment, Di Beichen glanced around and suddenly saw a line of words written on the wall of the pool to his right. Look, there are words written there. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately turned her eyes. As expected, the words were very grand and revealed a kind of elegance and carefreeness. It was a pity that they couldn't understand the meaning of the ancient words at all. There are indeed hints. Unfortunately, we can't understand it. Bailey Hongzhuang spread out her hands. It seemed that they could only feel it for themselves. Just as the two of them were moving forward slowly, the discussion of the cultivators behind them entered their ears. Chapter 5940. I also noticed that the further we go, the more difficult it is. What's going on? Could it be that this is a test? Do we need to go to the front? Everyone guessed. The cultivators who were originally at the edge also began to walk forward after hearing this. Although they didn't know the purpose of the pool, since there was resistance, it was obvious that the further they went, the better it was. However, after hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen in confusion. Beichen, do you feel resistance? I don't feel anything different. Me too. Bailey Hongzhuang felt strange. Everyone doesn't seem to be lying. This is interesting. Not long after, Di Xiaofeng also walked to the two and sighed. The further you go, the greater the pressure. I see that the two of you look very relaxed. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other and didn't say that they didn't feel any pressure. It's okay. Di Beichen smiled faintly. I feel that if we go to the other side of the pool, there might be different gains. Also, did you guys notice that the further we go, the denser the origin energy? Di Xiaofeng's eyes were filled with excitement. If we can reach the front, the cultivation speed there will be faster than here. Indeed, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. As they moved forward, the feeling of the origin energy gradually becoming denser was very obvious. Did you guys notice that there are actually lines at the bottom of the pool? Di Beichen looked at the bottom of the pool. The water was very clear, and he could easily see the bottom of the pool. He vaguely noticed that there were thin lines at the bottom of the pool. Although they weren't very obvious, he could still notice them if he looked closely. Di Xiaofeng was startled for a moment before looking at the bottom of the pool. His eyes were filled with surprise. Indeed, these lines aren't very obvious and almost merged into the pool. If you don't pay attention, you would think that they are ripples in the pool. What is the use of these thin threads? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and subconsciously looked at the words on the wall of the pool. If it wasn't for the fact that they didn't recognize them, they wouldn't have to keep guessing like this. I don't know, Di Beichen said in a low voice. Let's keep moving forward. We'll find out eventually. Lin Taxing and the others also noticed this from the conversation between the three of them. They felt that the pool was not only used for cultivation, but also had other uses. Almost everyone was moving forward with all their might. wanting to get ahead of the others and find out what was going on. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun also felt the resistance in the water after moving forward for a while. However, this resistance was not difficult for them, and they could still move forward steadily. Compared to how easy it was for the two of them, some of the cultivators behind them were already showing signs of straying. Every step forward seemed to be extremely difficult for them. The resistance is too great. It's so difficult to move forward. Really? I think it's okay. It doesn't seem to be as strenuous as you. Are you serious? You've already walked so much farther than me. Everyone was talking, and in the process, they found that everyone's situation was different. Chapter 59-41. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look behind her. Di Xiaofeng, Lin Taxing, and the others were still moving forward steadily, while some cultivators from the family clans had already widened the gap. From the unconcealed expressions on their faces, it could be seen that they actually wanted to catch up with everyone, but the increasingly strenuous feeling made them feel very helpless. Although we don't know what this is, let's keep moving forward and see how far we can go. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun with a smile. Her eyes curved slightly with the smile on her face, as bright as the crescent moon, bright and dazzling. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was obviously interested, Di Beichun's lips also curled into a smile, and he smiled dotingly. Okay. The two no longer hesitated and walked forward with all their strength. Bailey Yin Che and Ling were also unwilling to fall behind. They followed closely behind Di Beichun and moved forward. After seeing how interesting the situation was, Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Xiao Xuanzi also walked into the pool after seeing how interesting the situation was. Of course, with Xiao He and Xiao Bai's usual appearance, they would undoubtedly be submerged under the pool if they entered. The two little fellows immediately changed their figures and became the same size as Xiao Xuanzi. Only then did they continue to stride forward. Everyone who was originally moving forward with difficulty was shocked when they saw the sudden change of Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's two contract beasts could be said to be very famous, but they never knew that these two guys could change their figures at will. This was too strange, wasn't it? Everyone was stunned. Although contract beasts were not the same species as humans, they would grow stronger with age, and their bodies would also grow bigger. However, contract beasts that could change their sizes were really rare. These two people are already very abnormal on normal days, and now even their contract beasts are so abnormal. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. The more they understood, the more they realized how big the gap was, which made them feel extremely helpless. Nangong Yuqing looked at Di Beichun with a complicated expression. When they first met, he didn't put Di Beichun in his eyes at all. Now, Di Beichun had become an existence that everyone had to face. This guy's strength had increased terrifyingly. The Di family's heavenly physique truly lives up to its reputation. Chu Yingming sighed with emotion. The Di family had stood in the upper realm for so many years, so everyone had some understanding of the heavenly physique. Even if a cultivator with the heavenly physique appeared in the Di family would appear every time, this cultivator was an extremely powerful existence. If not for this, the Jun family would not have deliberately kidnapped Di Beichun when he was still in his swaddling clothes. She just didn't expect that one day, Di Beichun would actually come back. Following Chu Yingming's words, everyone nodded. The heavenly physique was publicly known to be extremely suitable for cultivation. Once a cultivator had the heavenly physique, their cultivation speed would far surpass ordinary cultivators. Thinking about the changes Di Beichun had undergone in the past few years, everyone understood. Now, he was the only heavenly moon cultivator among them. Perhaps in the future, he would leave them far behind. A portion of the cultivators who had reached the middle of the pool were unable to go any further. It was as if there was a terrifying resistance preventing them from moving forward. It was just a single step, but they couldn't cross it. I can't go any further. Why is that? Chapter 59-42. When the cultivators who were moving forward noticed that some of the cultivators were forced to stop, they found it very interesting. A sense of superiority arose in their hearts for no reason. At least, although they were under a lot of pressure, they could still move forward. Bailey Hongzhuang felt more and more resistance, and her steps became extremely slow. This feeling reminded her of the time when she climbed the stairway to heaven. It was the same feeling. Every step forward was extremely difficult, but in the end, there would be unimaginable gains. She couldn't help but think of her master, father, and others. It had been a while since she came out to train. She wondered if everyone was doing well. With how hard the seniors worked, they must have been in closed-door cultivation. Her father and master were rare geniuses. If they didn't encounter so many things back then, they would have already come to the upper realm and even gained a foothold. Although it was a bit late now, it was a good thing that cultivators had a long lifespan and they still had a lot of time. A warm smile bloomed on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. When she thought of her family, her expression was always gentle. When she first transmigrated, she was alone, but now, she looked at the familiar faces beside her. Everything was so beautiful. Compared to this happiness, the hardships and tribulations of training and fighting were nothing. I can't move forward anymore. Di Xiaofeng looked at where he was standing. Although he didn't want to admit it, the huge resistance clearly told him that it was impossible to move forward. In the process of moving forward, he clearly found a problem. That was that the horizontal lines clearly had a distinguishing effect. Although the pressure within the horizontal lines increased, it was still within a range that could be crossed. However, every time he crossed a horizontal line, the resistance would greatly increase. This feeling, it was like these horizontal lines were specially used to distinguish the difference. Every time he crossed a horizontal line, he would be separated by a level. When this thought appeared, he increasingly felt that all of this was real. Xiaofeng, you've already walked quite far. I can't move anymore. Lin Qianqian looked helplessly at Di Xiaofeng. At least Di Xiaofeng's position was a bit ahead of her. She stopped at this position and couldn't move forward anymore. Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng noticed Lin Qianqian behind him. Taking a closer look, he found that Lin Qianqian was one space behind him. I can't move either. Lin Taxing frowned. Although there was still a bit of unwillingness in his eyes, he had to admit that he really couldn't move forward. Di Xiaofeng looked again and found that Lin Taxing was in the same space as him, but slightly behind him. After Di Xiaofeng and the others couldn't move forward, most of the other cultivators stopped in the area behind Di Xiaofeng. Nangong Yuqing and Chu Yingming were in the same place. Jiang Wenyin, Murong Jing, Shangguan Yingying, and Wen Ziren were in the same place. Although they were slightly, of course, they were all in the same area. Chapter 59:43. Xiao Suo moved forward with difficulty. Her charming face showed some difficulty. After walking to a position not far away from Di Xiaofeng and others, it was very difficult to continue moving forward. Di Xiaofeng noticed that Chen Feng walked past him and continued to move forward. He also sighed in his heart. In fact, Chen Feng's cultivation talent had always been known by everyone. This eldest senior brother of the Great Devil Sect had always been in existence that no one was willing to offend. And from his current performance, it was clear that he was indeed stronger than everyone else. Although the cultivators of the Great Devil Sect had already stopped, when they saw that their eldest senior brother was still moving forward, they suddenly felt honored. On weekdays, when they went out for experience, ordinary cultivators would be polite to them. This was all thanks to their senior brother. In the end, Chen Feng stopped at a position one square away from Di Xiaofeng. Xiao Suo originally felt very depressed because she couldn't walk anymore, but when she saw that everyone had stopped, she became happy. Even if she didn't know what it meant to take a few more steps, it was great to be able to surpass others. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel depressed when she saw that Xiao Suo had surpassed most of them and stopped slightly behind Chen Feng. This annoying guy can actually reach this position. It's unbelievable. Lin Qianqian patted Lin Yi's hand and lowered her voice. She has always been regarded as the light saint by the Light Sacred Assembly. Naturally, she has a certain advantage. Anyway, it's not fun to watch. Lin Yi pouted. She didn't like Xiao Suo from the past. Now after so many things happened, she didn't like her even more. Qing Devil couldn't help but spit after finding that he had fallen behind Xiao, so what a waste. He can't even compare to a woman. If it was his own body, all of this would not be a problem. However, he was occupying Jun Lingxuan's body now. Naturally, everything was calculated according to this body. Now, the difference between them was obvious. He suddenly felt that he should find a chance to change his body. This guy might be good in other people's eyes, but it was obviously not good enough in his eyes. As all the cultivators stopped in their tracks, they turned their attention to Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang. With a glance, they discovered that Bai Li Yin She was traveling with the two of them. At this moment, Di Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang, and Bai Li Yin She were moving forward together. Unknowingly, they had left the rest of the group behind. Linger was also following behind the three of them. However, she stopped when she was one space ahead of Chun Feng and one space behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Judging from his expression, it was obvious that he was unable to move forward. Hongzhuang and the others are really abnormal. They can actually walk so far ahead of us. Shang Wannying couldn't help but sigh. Although she had long known that the gap between them was not small, she still couldn't help but sigh when the gap was completely revealed. Indeed, this is expected. Di Xiaofeng spread his hands, but his eyes couldn't stop smiling. At first, his family was worried that Beichun and Lin Yi would be pressured. Now it seemed that everything was simply overthinking. Chapter 59-44. The resistance is getting stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang felt the resistance brought by the water in the pool, and a dividing line appeared in front of her eyes. She had used all her strength, but the resistance was too amazing. She knew that she couldn't go much further. Luckily, she wasn't far from the other side of the pool. There were only 2 spaces left. As long as she could cross this space, she would only be 1 space away from the other side. Ling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 who were still moving forward. Her gaze changed slightly before landing on Bai Li Yin She. The Beast King was indeed a different existence. Even the dragon race couldn't compare to it. Di Xiaofeng and the others found that they couldn't move forward no matter what, so they simply sat in the pool. Cultivating here was much faster than cultivating at the edge of the pool. Although they were envious of the cultivation environment in front of them, they could only watch. Just then, the 9-tailed inferno fox who had been silent suddenly spoke. "The man walking in front is your brother?" Hearing the voice in his mind, Di Xiaofeng was startled. After understanding that the 9-tailed inferno fox took the initiative to communicate with him, he was in disbelief. Although the 9-tailed inferno fox was in his body, when he tried to communicate with it, the 9-tailed inferno fox had always been lazy and didn't want to talk to him. Now that it took the initiative to speak, how could he not be surprised? "I'm asking you a question," the 9-tailed inferno fox said. Di Xiaofeng nodded. "The man on the left is my brother, the one on the right isn't." "Nonsense. The one on the right is the Beast King." However, even the Beast King became a contract beast. This woman is also very amazing. Seeing that the 9-tailed inferno fox saw through the Beast King's identity, Di Xiaofeng wasn't surprised. Beasts had their own methods that they couldn't understand. Furthermore, the 9-tailed inferno fox was also a very powerful existence. It was natural for it to recognize the Beast King. "Your brother's cultivation talent is much stronger than yours. He's actually on par with the Beast King. He's really an amazing genius." The 9-tailed inferno fox's cold voice was somewhat emotional. If Di Xiaofeng could see the 9-tailed inferno fox's current appearance, he would find that its eyes were unprecedentedly bright. That feeling was like a person who had been starving for a long time suddenly seeing a delicious cake. That kind of joy and anticipation couldn't be expressed with words. Di Xiaofeng smiled and nodded. "My second brother is a cultivation genius. He has the destiny body. The destiny body is not bad, but even the destiny body can't reach such a cultivation. He should have gained quite a bit in the Darkness Palace. With his cultivation talent, he will definitely be an existence that will shock the world in the future. I've been waiting for so many years. And finally, Most importantly, this guy had awakened the darkness attribute. Vaguely, it even felt that all of this was destined by the heavens. How did you see that Beichen's talent is very strong? Di Xiaofeng felt a bit strange after he reacted. He had watched Beichen cultivate all the way. With that terrifying speed of improvement, he could see that Beichen's cultivation talent was extraordinary. Chapter 5945. Looking at Di Xiaofeng's puzzled expression, the nine-tailed inferno fox rolled her eyes. You guys are now in the talent testing pool. Do you think I can't see your cultivation talent? As soon as she said that, Di Xiaofeng was slightly stunned. Talent testing pool. That's right. This pool is used to test talent. The more a cultivator advances, the purer his cultivation talent is. Look carefully. According to the position of each cultivator and their cultivation talent, isn't it very consistent? The nine-tailed inferno fox seemed to be in a good mood at the moment. Hence, she was willing to say more to Di Xiaofeng. Di Xiaofeng subconsciously looked at everyone. Previously, he felt that the position of everyone had a meaning. At this moment, he understood everything. Shunfeng's cultivation talent was stronger than theirs. Hence, he always occupied the first place. The further they went, the fewer cultivators there were. Similarly, the cultivators at the back did not exist. In fact, the cultivators who came here were not weak existences in their families. Their cultivation talent would naturally not be too bad. The positions of the most outstanding cultivators in each family were not too different. Hence, their cultivation had always been on par with each other all these years. So it's like this. After Di Xiaofeng understood everything, when he looked at Di Beichen's group again, his gaze was even more complicated. If the distance in the pool was divided into 10 levels, then most of them stayed between the 5th and 7th level. However, Ling was at the 8th level. Now, Bailey Hongshuang's group was about to reach the 9th level. Such cultivation talent was indeed very abnormal. What a blockhead. This kind of thing can be understood just by thinking about it. The nine-tailed inferno fox shook her head. However, although you're a bit stupid, your luck is not bad. To be able to come to the Radiant Temple and enter the talent testing pool here is a kind of luck in itself. This talent testing pool is only used to test a cultivator's talent. However, the cultivation speed here is not bad. Di Xiaofeng slowly said. This time, he had really gained a lot from coming to this ancient battlefield. If you think that this place can only test talent, then you're wrong. The nine-tailed inferno fox chuckled. Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows. Could it be that it has other uses? The innate talent testing pool is a place that many cultivators dream of. Once you come here, you can test your innate talent level. Other than the fact that the water here was rich in energy, there was nothing special about it. Staying in the pool and letting the water wash over your body will unknowingly increase your cultivation talent. If it weren't for the fact that I'm only a soul now and don't have a physical body, I wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. You're saying that this pool of water can improve one's cultivation talent. Di Xiaofeng was stunned. As far as he knew, cultivation talent was innate. Although it could be improved through hard work, it was impossible to improve one's innate talent. Even elixirs wouldn't be able to do so. Now, the nine-tailed inferno fox actually told him that staying in this pool of water could increase his cultivation talent. This was simply too precious. He didn't think that the nine-tailed inferno fox would lie to him. As long as their cultivation talent increased, it meant that their cultivation speed would be even faster in the future. Chapter 5946. Looking at Di Xiaofeng's stunned look, the nine-tailed inferno fox was amused. So now do you understand why I said this is an opportunity that can only be encountered by chance? Do I just have to sit in this pool? Di Xiaofeng couldn't hide his excitement. He just wanted to seize this opportunity to improve his talent. You can cultivate in this pool. Your talent will be improved, and your cultivation will also improve quickly. The nine-tailed inferno fox's calm voice revealed a bit of vicissitudes, as if it was thinking of its past self. Such an opportunity was a dream come true for both the human race and the beast race. Back then, it was the same as the Qing devil, looking forward to entering the Light Palace one day, but it didn't expect to come here after so many years. The Qing devil was now occupying someone else's body. He could still experience this feeling, but it could only watch. I understand. Di Xiaofeng smiled, but then he thought of how the nine-tailed inferno fox mentioned Di Beichen and couldn't help but ask, "By the way, why are you suddenly so concerned about my brother's situation? I have a friend who is a dark attribute monster. After we get out of here, I want your brother to accompany me to see him." Di Xiaofeng frowned slightly, feeling a little suspicious. He didn't know what was going on. After the incident of Jun Lingxuan being possessed, he was a little more wary of such a strong existence. Beichen's cultivation talent was so strong that he must be the best target for many experts to possess. Even if the other party was a beast race, he couldn't be sure that such a thing wouldn't happen. After seeing Di Xiaofeng fall into silence, the nine-tailed inferno fox immediately said, "Don't worry, I won't harm your brother. What's more, demonic beasts won't possess humans." Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng was relieved. Possession was really too terrifying. If he hadn't seen Jun Lingxuan's situation with his own eyes, he wouldn't have come into contact with all this before. "Then I'll talk to Beichen later. He will go." The nine-tailed inferno fox was very certain. After saying that, it didn't say anything else. When Bailey Hongzhuang crossed the line, she felt relieved. At least she had crossed the line. However, after crossing this line, she couldn't go any further after taking 2 steps. Looking at the 2 men beside her, she couldn't help but smile. Then, she spread her hands and said helplessly, "The 2 of you are stronger than me." She could no longer move forward, but the 2 men beside her did not stop like her. Instead, they took another step forward. However, after the 2 of them took another step, they could no longer move forward. The resistance in front of them was too terrifying, and they were unable to take another step forward. When Di Xiaofeng saw that Beichen's cultivation talent was higher than Hong Zhuang's, he was a bit shocked. However, after thinking about it, Beichen had the heavenly fate physique, while Hong Zhuang only had an ordinary physique. To be able to reach such a cultivation talent was already very shocking. As for Bali Yanxie, as a beast king, its talent was not something ordinary monsters could compare to. It was an existence that wanted to become the beast king. Chapter 59-47. Mo Yunjue was the last person to set off because he was about to break through when the others were moving forward. After he broke through, he noticed that everyone was already moving towards the pool. Bailey Hongzhuang had already noticed Mo Yunjue's previous situation. She knew that under such circumstances, no one would find trouble with Yinju, so she was very relieved. After stopping, she, Beichun, and Yanxie sat in the pool like everyone else. The yuan qi here was much denser than before, so cultivating here would be much faster. After noticing that Yinju had broken through, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "Yinju, try walking over here. The vitality here is denser." Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mo Yunjue's eyes flashed with gentleness. Okay. Di Xiaofeng and the others also looked over. They had a good impression of Mo Yunjue. Although he rarely spoke, it had to be said that his cold and handsome appearance made him an existence that was hard to ignore. Moreover, according to their understanding, Yunju's cultivation talent was also very strong. The women from the Lin and Di family cultivators couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. During this period of time, they couldn't help but yearn for this dignified man with a face that said no strangers should come near. Even if Mo Yunjue didn't have any background in the upper realm, they didn't think it was a problem at all. This was because Mo Yunjue himself was an existence with great potential. Di Beichen and the others were outstanding, but they were all taken. There was no possibility of them being together. However, Mo Yunjue had always been alone. Mo Yunjue walked forward slowly. Without a doubt, he easily passed by the place where the ordinary cultivators stopped. During the process of walking, he felt that the pool was indeed very interesting. This kind of feeling was like a kind of selection. Noticing where everyone stopped, he felt that this was the purpose of the pool. Not long after, Imo Yunjue arrived at where Di Xiaofeng was. Seeing this scene, Nangong Yuqing and the others began to take this man seriously. Because Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were always in the limelight, they didn't pay much attention to the people around them. Before, they discovered that Ling Er and Bai Li Yanche were very terrifying existences. Now, they discovered that Mo Yunjue was also very amazing. At the very least, Mo Yunjue was on the same level as them. Just when everyone thought that everything was over, they discovered that Mo Yunjue didn't stop and continued to walk forward. Seeing this, everyone was stunned. Chu Yingming and the others looked at each other in dismay. They immediately felt that they had lost all face. A group of cultivators from the lower realm were also amazing. Although they didn't know what this difference in position meant, the fact that Di Xiaofeng could do what they couldn't was already a slap in their faces. Mo Yunjue walked forward slowly. He was calm and indifferent, not caring about what others thought. He only wanted to see what position he could reach. Not long after, Mo Yunjue arrived at Chunfeng's position. Noticing this, everyone sank into silence. As for the young women, their eyes shone brightly. He was truly outstanding like this. Chapter 59-48. After seeing Mo Yunjue's situation, a trace of astonishment flashed through Chunfeng's eyes. However, he quickly calmed down. In fact, he had always known about Mo Yunjue's cultivation talent. That was because they were able to reach the upper realm through their own efforts. This in itself was already proof of their strength. Apart from that, he also noticed something else. Di Beichun was the young master of the Di family, while Bailey Hongzhuang was the holy maiden of light. Both of them undoubtedly had abundant cultivation resources. However, Mo Yunjue did not have any background. Even if the Di family treated him extremely well, the treatment he received was still incomparable to Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang. Under such circumstances, he was able to maintain such a speed of improvement. It could be seen that his talent was very strong. If Mo Yunjue also joined a sect, he would definitely be nurtured as a top disciple. His achievements might be even more impressive. Among the cultivators in the lower realm, there were also quite a number of top geniuses. Mo Yunjue looked at Chun Feng, who was also paying attention to him. He nodded slightly before once again taking a step forward. This step, even though it was somewhat difficult for him to take, he still succeeded. Seeing this scene, Chun Feng's eyes narrowed. The shock in his heart became even stronger. He did not know what crossing this pool meant. However, at least it proved that in a certain aspect, Mo Yunjue was stronger than him. Everyone was already stunned. They silently looked at the tall and indifferent black figure, and they didn't know exactly how far he would go. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had already sat down. After noticing that Mo Yunjue was slowly approaching them, a joyful smile appeared on their faces. At the same time, Di Xiaofeng's voice also entered Di Beichun's ears. Beichun, the nine-tailed inferno fox, told me that this pool is used to test one's talent. The further ahead a cultivator is, the higher their talent is. Apart from that, this pool also has an effect on improving our physiques. As long as we stay in this pool for a period of time, our physiques will also change, and our talents will also increase. Hearing this, Di Beichun's deep eyes flashed with a strange light, but his expression was rather calm. I see. In fact, after connecting all the dots, he already had this conjecture in his mind. Now, he was certain of it. Beichun, what are you thinking about? Noticing the subtle change in Di Beichun's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately asked. My brother told me something just now. Di Beichun told Bailey Hongzhuang about the situation with a faint smile, and the latter immediately showed a look of understanding. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang came to a realization. It's no wonder that we can reach such a high position. Our talent has already improved when we were in the Darkness Shrine previously. Di Beichun nodded slightly. If we didn't go to the Darkness Shrine, we wouldn't be able to reach our current position. This way, We can clearly see everyone's talent. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. After taking a closer look, she realized that cultivation was indeed related to everyone's talent for cultivation. As long as they were the core cultivators of the major forces, their talents were all quite outstanding. After all, to be able to become a top force in the upper realm, the cultivation resources they had would not be too far off. Similarly, this was also the reason why the young masters and senior brothers of the major forces had similar strengths. Chapter 59-49. Bailey Yin Che smiled faintly. Every generation of Beast Kings has top-notch talent in cultivation. That's why there's only one Beast King. You have to pay the price for what you get. God is always fair. Beast Kings have unique cultivation conditions and long lifespans, but they're destined to be lonely. Although it's unbelievable for a Beast King to become a contract beast in the eyes of others, to him, it's not a problem at all. On the contrary, he enjoys all of this and feels that God is treating him well. He's never been lonely when he's by Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Now, he doesn't feel lonely at all. That's because he has someone he cares about the most. Mo Yunjue slowly walked forward until he reached the same position as Ling before stopping. Seeing that Mo Yunjue finally stopped moving forward, many cultivators heaved a sigh of relief. This situation has already given them a lot of shock. If Mo Yunjue can also reach the same position as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, they really feel that they probably won't be able to become enemies with the D family in the future. With so many outstanding cultivators, they'll be an extremely terrifying existence in the future. When Mo Yunjue saw that he couldn't continue moving forward, a complicated look flashed across his eyes that were as deep as a black hole. He then sat down on the spot. Is there such a gap between him and Bewitching? Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest sighed in their hearts at Mo Yunjue's talent. If they hadn't gone to the Darkness Shrine, they probably wouldn't have reached a better position than Yunju. Yunjue, the pool water here has the effect of increasing one's cultivation talent. You must grasp this opportunity well. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. In fact, Ling and Mo Yunjue were only one space away from them. It wasn't far at all, and it was very convenient for them to talk. Hearing this, Mo Yunjue's cold face brightened up a little. From his slightly dilated eyes, it could be seen that he was very surprised by this news. In that case, the situation here is used to test one's cultivation talent. That's right. Bewitching nodded. This is the talent testing pool. As soon as he said that, many of the cultivators present heard him, and their expressions changed again and again. Xiao Shou was already very dissatisfied with the distance between her and Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that she knew that this situation represented the difference in talent, her expression became even uglier. She had always been unconvinced that the Holy Light Assembly believed that Bailey Hongzhuang was stronger than her, but she felt that there was no evidence at all. Now, this test actually said that Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation talent was so much stronger than hers. How is this possible? Even if she knew that there was a gap between them, wasn't it too much of a slap in the face? Fortunately, no one noticed Xiao Shou at this time because almost everyone was immersed in depression and helplessness. Nangong Yuqing looked at the gap between himself and Di Beichen and suddenly understood how this guy was able to surpass him in cultivation in such a short time. With such a gap in talent, it was only a matter of time before he caught up. If it was just a gap in cultivation, he wouldn't be so desperate because as long as he worked hard, he might be able to catch up. However, with such a gap in talent, how could he catch up? Chapter 59-50. It was not only Nangong Yuqing who was in despair. Chu Yingming and others were also speechless after realizing such a gap. The physique of destiny is really powerful. I didn't feel it before when I heard about it. Now I understand it. With such a cultivation talent, how can he not become a powerhouse? Everyone with an unbalanced mentality could only blame it on Beichen's physique. After all, the other party was born with a cultivation physique. How could ordinary people have such good luck? Our family's physique of destiny is already amazing. All the cultivators of the D family had a smug look on their faces. Their young master was in the limelight. How could they not be happy about it? Proud, proud. Following such a young master, their future will be bright. Just this point alone was enough to crush the young lords or eldest senior brothers of other forces. After Lin Yi saw that a group of cultivators attributed this reason to her second cousin's physique, she couldn't help but say, "It's true that second cousin has the physique of destiny, but my second cousin-in-law is not, and neither is Yin Che." As Lin Yi's words fell, everyone's expression stiffened. Originally, they found a fig leaf to cover their shame, and they could still get out of the situation. Now, Lin Yi's words undoubtedly took away everyone's fig leaf directly, making them unable to find a way out of this embarrassing situation. For a while, everyone looked at each other and fell into silence. The initial joy of entering the pool had completely dissipated after hearing the news. All that was left was depression, a kind of deep depression that came from being struck by a blow. Qing Devil looked at everyone present. His mood was also very depressed. Mo Yunjue's cultivation talent itself was not bad. In addition, he could still improve after coming to the talent testing pool. However, after seeing the talents of Di Beichun and others, this body was really not good enough. He was helpless. Why wasn't the person who touched the ring Di Beichun? If it was Di Beichun or by Yin Che, then it could be imagined that under his control, they would become more powerful cultivators in the future than before. However, it was obviously impossible now. After Mo Yunjue knew that this was the talent testing pool, a hint of sadness flashed quietly in his eyes. Soon, he regained his calmness again. His always indifferent and expressionless face did not change, as if he never cared about it. After everyone accepted this fact helplessly, they no longer delayed and began to cultivate. Since their talents were no longer comparable, they still had to compete with others. The entire hall fell into silence again. Everyone was cultivating peacefully in the talent testing pool. The rich spirit power continued to pour into the cultivators' bodies, and the clear pool water also washed everyone's body. In such an environment, everyone felt unprecedentedly comfortable. Similarly, their cultivation base also made rapid progress. As the time spent cultivating gradually increased, one cultivator after another broke through one after another. In a short period of time, many cultivators had a breakthrough. In this case, in a short time, many cultivators had a breakthrough. In such a case, in a short time. Normally, it would be extremely difficult to break through, but here, there was a large number of breakthroughs. After casting aside their previous gloominess, everyone was once again in a state of joy. Chapter 59-51. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had become their family head, they felt that their family had become more and more fortunate. Even though the family head rarely returned to the family, and it was the old family head who took care of all the family matters, even if it was just a symbol, it was enough. Now, they were already a very glorious existence among the ordinary aristocratic families. As long as they continued, it would not be long before their family's power would increase again, and they would leap from a small family to a mid-sized family. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Bailey Hongzhuang could clearly feel the changes in her body. Her body's affinity with elemental energy had increased once again, and her cultivation speed had also increased. Logically speaking, based on her current cultivation level, she would need to spend a lot of time to raise her cultivation level. However, she did not feel that way at all. Her breakthrough speed was still the same as before, and there was no change. This change made her very happy. Since this innate talent testing pool had the effect of raising one's innate talent, she could try to see if there were any changes. When this thought surfaced, Bailey Hongzhuang stood up and slowly took a step forward. This step still had a lot of resistance, but she realized that it was different from before when she could not move at all. Even though this step was extremely difficult, she still managed to take it. A dazzling smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's exquisite face. Even though it was only a small step, its significance was extraordinary. Just as everyone was immersed in their cultivation, Bailey Hongzhuang's action was undoubtedly very eye-catching. After noticing her change, everyone's eyes flashed with interest. They could also try to see if there were any changes in their innate talents. After this attempt, everyone realized that their innate talents had indeed increased. Even though it was more or less, there was still a certain amount of improvement. Everyone's face lit up with joy. An increase in one's innate talent was usually almost impossible, but now, everyone had really done it. Even if it was only a small step, it meant that everyone's cultivation speed would increase even faster in the future. In their eyes, the ancient battlefield was like a paradise. Just the rewards here were enough to match up to the many places they had been to in the past. This was because this kind of increase was the most practical. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't stop there. Instead, she went forward again and tried again. This time, she only took a small step and couldn't go any further. Bewitching and the others also tried. Everyone moved forward a little, but in the process, they also noticed that Mo Yunjue seemed to have moved a little wider. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mo Yunjue, who was getting closer to her. She couldn't help but have a thought in her mind. Could Yunju also have some extraordinary special constitution? If it were any other ordinary person, they would probably not be able to achieve such a formidable cultivation talent. One had to know that Linger was a member of the dragon race. The cultivation talent of the dragon clan had always been praised by others. The fact that Mo Yunjue could reach this level was already very surprising. The cultivation continued, but from the initial comfort, there was now a trace of pain. Gradually, everyone frowned as they endured the discomfort and pain coming from their bodies. Chapter 59-52. Bewitching seemed to have guessed Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts and quietly held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Feeling the warmth of Bewitching's palm, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly opened her eyes and turned her head to look at the deep pool of tenderness. The corners of her lips curled up slightly, and her smile was sweet. No one spoke, but they all understood each other's thoughts. The pain in the Light Palace was not as intense as the pain in the Darkness Palace, and was simply unbearable. However, the duration was much longer than in the Darkness Palace. Everyone's brows were tightly knitted together as they endured the pain without making a sound. Although the feeling was very unbearable, it was worth it to think about the results. The days of cultivation flew by, and everyone could not even remember how long they had been here. The Light Palace was the same every day. It was bright and spacious, and one could not feel the passage of time. They could only feel their own progress. When Bailey Hongzhuang took another 2 steps forward, she finally succeeded in reaching the last square. In a split second, she felt an incomparably rich yuan qi, as if it was about to envelop her entire body. The demon summoning scripture quickly circulated and frantically absorbed the yuan qi around her. In this period of time, she had also successfully broken through to the heavenly moon stage. Di Beichen and Bai Li Yin Cheng naturally also reached the last square. Feeling the difference here, the two of them were somewhat surprised. It was only a change of 1 square, but the difference in yuan qi was too great. Ling and Mo Yunjue also walked to where Di Beichen and the other 2 were previously. Everyone carefully checked and found that almost everyone's talent had increased by 1 level. Immediately, everyone was even more envious of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2. It was also 1 square, but the difference in Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2's 1 square was much greater than the difference in their own 1 square. This meant that Di Beichen and the other 2 had already reached the peak of cultivation talent. They didn't know how many cultivators in the world could achieve such top-notch talent. But looking at these people who usually boasted of being geniuses, they knew that it was really rare. Such a scene made them feel that they were destined to look up to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in the future. 7 days later, everyone was surprised to find that the talent testing pool had disappeared. The ground beneath his feet became incomparably smooth. Other than the area of the entire hall becoming slightly larger, it was as if nothing had happened. However, the increase in their strength clearly reminded them that everything was real. Everyone could not help but sigh with a trace of regret in their hearts. If such a good cultivation opportunity existed for a little longer, it would undoubtedly be extremely good. Unfortunately, all of this was probably over now. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the situation in the main hall, her mind thinking. She didn't know if there were any other mechanisms. This hall seems to be slightly smaller than the Darkness Shrine. Di Beichen looked around with a deep gaze. He had been in the Darkness Shrine for a long time, and he was very clear about the boundaries of the Darkness Shrine. Logically speaking, the Brilliant Shrine shouldn't be weaker than the Darkness Shrine in this aspect. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. This meant that there might be something that they had not discovered yet. At the same time, Qing Devil had already begun to search around the hall. Chapter 59-53. All the cultivators took action immediately, hoping to find other legacies that might exist in the Brilliant Shrine. No matter what it would definitely be of great help to them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't stay idle either, and instead continued to search around. This kind of opportunity was very precious to everyone. However, after everyone groped around the walls, they didn't find anything special, let alone a mechanism. They couldn't even feel anything different from the walls. They searched the Brilliant Shrine for 2 whole days in disbelief, but they still found nothing. There's probably nothing else, Shangguan Yingying said as she looked around. Shangguan Yingying looked around. In her opinion, the fact that the talent testing pool had improved everyone's cultivation talent was already a very impressive thing. She was now full of admiration and gratitude for the Brilliant Shrine. Usually, she would have to go all out and even risk her life to get such an opportunity. However, it was so simple now. It felt like a high and mighty God was bestowing gifts to his people. What seemed amazing to them might be insignificant to the Brilliant Shrine. Indeed, when Zyra nodded, "It's enough for us to have such a harvest." No one would be dissatisfied with such a harvest. In fact, everyone had been in a blissful state of rapid breakthroughs for a while. At least, coming to the Brilliant Shrine had helped them save more time on the road to cultivation, which also meant that they could go further in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. She and Beichen both felt that there might be something in the Brilliant Shrine that they hadn't discovered. However, they hadn't found anything even after searching everywhere. In that case, could it be that they had made a wrong judgment? Since light and darkness had always been opposing existences, the situation inside was likely to be different. They were just guessing based on the situation in the Darkness Shrine. No one knew if it was accurate or not. Why don't we continue searching? Anyway, the door isn't closed. There were still many cultivators who were unwilling to give up. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, they wouldn't give up. The Malachian fiend chose to give up after spending 2 days on it. He returned to his original seat and continued to copy the book. The sudden appearance of the talent testing pool caused him to be unable to complete his transcription. Since the other inheritances might be gone, he should at least copy everything here before the Brilliant Shrine closed. Di Beichen looked at the back of Qing Devil with a complicated expression. Since they had just entered the Divine Hall of Light, they had no time to deal with the Qing Devil. If the inheritance of the Divine Hall of Light had ended, they would have to deal with Qing Devil first. If Qing Devil was allowed to return to the Jun family as Junling Xuan, there would be a lot of trouble in the future. Although Azure Fiend was at peace with him now, it was only because he knew that he was no match for them. As long as Azure Fiend had a certain amount of power, he would definitely think of ways to deal with them. This person was not a magnanimous person. The only reason he had told them these things was because they had forced him to. Chapter 59-54. Qing Devil seemed to have noticed Di Beichen's gaze. He slowly turned his head, and a glimmer of light flashed across his dark eyes. How could he not know that Di Beichen's desire to kill him had never dissipated? From the beginning, they were destined to be opponents. In fact, he had always regretted not killing Bewitching before and missed the best opportunity. Now, he couldn't even kill Bewitching. Not to mention that the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was already very troublesome. He couldn't deal with Bewitching's current strength. Once Bewitching made up his mind to kill him, it would be very difficult for him to escape. Looking at the contents on the wall, he didn't have much left. As long as he copied these contents, he wouldn't continue to stay here. Seizing a body would consume a lot of energy. After so many years of consumption, his soul force was not as good as it used to be. In addition, although he succeeded in seizing the body and fighting with Junling Xuan, his vitality was also greatly damaged. Although he looked fine on the surface, in reality, there were still some problems and hidden dangers. As long as he didn't encounter any danger, he would be able to recover slowly after a period of recuperation. Fortunately, everyone was still looking for other inheritances in the Light Palace, so he still had a chance. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. She didn't find anything after 2 days. She felt that the possibility of finding another mechanism was too small. There were so many people present, and everyone tried their best to find it, but they couldn't find it. This meant that it probably didn't exist. While thinking, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly took out the Holy Girl Crystal. The Holy Girl Crystal was a sacred object of the Light's sacred assembly, and it also belonged to the Light attribute. She didn't know if it would change in the Light Palace. With the appearance of the Holy Girl Crystal, a dazzling light flashed, and everyone's eyes fell on the Holy Girl Crystal. This was a sacred object of the Light sacred assembly. Except for the Holy Girl succession ceremony, no one had seen the Holy Girl Crystal at close range. Now that they were close enough to sense it, everyone couldn't help but be envious. This was indeed a top-notch treasure. Xiao Shou looked at the Saintess Crystal, her delicate face filled with jealousy. She used to come into contact with the Saintess Crystal often and was very familiar with it. Originally, he thought that the Holy Maiden Crystal would definitely fall into her hands. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen in the end? Now that she saw Bailey Hongzhuang holding it, she naturally had mixed feelings. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at the Holy Maiden Crystal. She had always known that the Holy Maiden Crystal was filled with pure light energy, which was not much weaker than the energy in the Light Palace. However, after she took it out, she found that the Holy Maiden Crystal was a little different from before. The power of the Light Palace surged into the Holy Maiden Crystal, making the already dazzling Holy Maiden Crystal even more dazzling and enchanting. It was as dazzling as a gemstone, blinding everyone's eyes. The speed at which the Holy Maiden Crystal absorbed the light energy was much faster than when everyone was cultivating. The power that was visible to the naked eye was constantly surging into it. The cultivators who were closer to it could clearly feel the terrifying suction force. It seems that the Holy Maiden Crystal is really an incredible treasure. It actually has such a change here. Chapter 59-55. It is a treasure that has been passed down for generations in the Holy Assembly, so it is not strange for it to have such a change. Everyone thought about it carefully and did not find it strange. The reason why the Holy Assembly could stand for so many years was because of the Holy Maiden Crystal. They had made such great progress in the Light Temple, so maybe the Holy Maiden Crystal would also undergo a transformation. Bailey Hongzhuang found that a strange power suddenly emerged from the Holy Maiden Crystal, and under the influence of this power, she slowly let go of her hand. The Holy Maiden Crystal gradually flew into the air, like the most dazzling pearl in the entire Light Temple, dazzling and enchanting. After this power flowed through the Holy Maiden Crystal, a part of it flowed to her body, gradually passing through her body, giving her a very special feeling. Under the influence of this power, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly closed her eyes, operated the demon summoning scripture, and entered into a state of cultivation again. In her line of sight, the Holy Maiden Crystal was floating in the air, and Bailey Hongzhuang was sitting under the Holy Maiden Crystal. The rich and terrifying pure power continued to flow into the holy maiden crystal and Bailey Hongzhuang's body. As time gradually passed, the holy maiden crystal became brighter, and the aura it emitted became more and more sacred. Bailey Hongzhuang's body was surrounded by a bright light, and at a glance, it was as if her body was also shining like the holy maiden crystal. Her exquisite and incomparable face was like an exquisite sculpture, and every curve was perfect to the extreme. Her sparkling and translucent skin had a jade-like luster, and her ink-black hair was scattered behind her head like silk, contrasting with her ivory-white skin, making her even more attractive. It was a kind of soul-stirring beauty, like a holy maiden of the immortal world, with an ethereal and holy aura. Everyone stared at Bailey Hongzhuang and could not help but hold their breaths. Facing such a stunning beauty, no one had the slightest covetousness in their hearts. On the contrary, they could not help but have a kind of devout worship in their hearts. She was like a goddess, an existence on a completely different level from them. Shangguan Yingying stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze, and there were only 3 words in her mind: too beautiful. She had always known that Hongzhuang was extremely beautiful, but at this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang was almost beautiful to the extreme, making people unable to believe that all this was real. Was there really such a perfect person in the world? She was as beautiful as a painting, and no one could bear to disturb her, for fear that she would disappear if they touched her. Di Bei-chun just stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, his handsome face carrying a bit of pride, but the depths of his eyes were heavy and complicated. Her red makeup was too beautiful. She was as beautiful as a fairy from the 9th heaven. However, even though she was surrounded by a holy aura, she didn't seem to belong to this mortal world. It was as if she had unknowingly become a little distant. The hands under his sleeves slowly closed. He had always known that Hongzhuang was not an ordinary person, and he would do his best to protect the person he wanted to protect. And Mo Yunjue's eyes, which had always been calm, were now filled with amazement. He could still clearly remember the first time he saw Hongzhuang. She was being chased by a group of demonic beasts. At that time, she was a bit mischievous and a bit embarrassed, but she was still very beautiful. After several years, Hongzhuang had become even more beautiful. Chapter 59-56. Xiao So noticed the way everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and couldn't help but feel depressed. This Bailey Hongzhuang was simply a demoness. Apart from a demon, who else would be able to bewitch people like this? Even she, facing such a Bailey Hongzhuang, couldn't help but feel ashamed. Is the Saintess crystal resonating with the Temple of Light? When Xiren looked at the Saintess crystal above, and his eyes were full of amazement. If they hadn't come to the Temple of Light, they probably wouldn't have seen such a sacred scene. He didn't know what kind of changes the Saintess crystal would cause, but he knew that this Saintess crystal must be an incredible treasure, to be able to resonate with the Temple of Light. Even if it was just an ordinary treasure, after going through the baptism of the Temple of Light, its effect would be greatly enhanced, not to mention that it was a treasure in itself. It should be like this. Shangguan Yingying nodded and crossed her fingers in front of her chest. Her delicate face was full of anticipation. I think Hongzhuang's future is really limitless. Seeing Hongzhuang gain such a harvest, she only felt happier than her own gain. The Temple of Light really lives up to its name. Di Xiaofeng said slowly. At least the other guilds didn't have such a treasure. Bailey Hongzhuang was originally the Saintess of Light, and after going through the baptism of the Temple of Light, her influence after returning to the Temple of Light would probably be even greater. This time they came to the ancient battlefield. Their harvest was really too rich. He could already imagine that after they returned, after ordinary families knew about the talent of Bei-chun and Hongzhuang, as long as they had some brains, they wouldn't easily find trouble with them. After all, for such talented cultivators, as long as they couldn't be killed in the cradle in the early stage, it was almost impossible to suppress them in the later stage. He had lived in the family for so many years, so he understood this situation very well. He originally thought that his talent was already good, but after seeing Beichen's talent, he understood what a real top genius was. Now he was completely relieved. Such a brother was not only extremely talented, but also very hardworking. The D family would definitely flourish in his hands. Bailey Hongzhuang was completely immersed in cultivation. She felt an endless amount of energy flowing through her body. Although not all the energy could be absorbed, she felt that all the impurities in her body seemed to have been completely removed. This removal was different from the cleansing of the marrow and meridians, but purifying the yuan energy in her body. During daily cultivation, because of the faster speed, sometimes the yuan energy evolution wasn't pure enough, and there would be some impurities. These impurities usually didn't seem to affect her, but in the long run, it might affect the final result. In fact, after going through the baptism of the Darkness Temple and Radiant Temple, her body and the elemental energy in her body had become purer than before. This was what Linzes the Saintess of Light says. If she had known this would happen, she would have taken out the Saintess crystal earlier. It was just that she hadn't thought of this before. Fortunately, she suddenly had an idea and took it out at the last moment. Otherwise, she would have missed the opportunity to upgrade the Saintess crystal. Chapter 59-57. All the cultivators present looked at Bailey Hongzhuang enviously. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was already at the peak. Now that the Saintess crystal had undergone such a change, it was imaginable how much her strength had increased. However, everyone knew very well that this was not something they could obtain, even if they were envious. Looking at it now, the Radiant Saint Hall did indeed have another legacy. However, this legacy belonged to Bailey Hongzhuang and had nothing to do with them. Everyone sighed faintly and did not waste any more time. They continued to cultivate. Without the Saintess crystal, their cultivation speed naturally could not compare to Bailey Hongzhuang. However, their cultivation speed here was still much faster than outside. Since the Radiant Palace was not closed yet, they would cultivate as much as they could. As Di Beichun cultivated, he paid attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's situation. Gradually, he discovered that the Saintess crystal was becoming brighter and brighter. The crystal was also becoming more and more saturated. This feeling was just like how the Saintess crystal had not absorbed energy for a long time. Although it was still very powerful, it was not in its strongest state. Now, after absorbing enough energy, the Saintess crystal gradually became full. The energy it emitted was much more powerful than before. If they had not come to the Radiant Palace, who knew when they would have known that the power of the Saintess crystal could be increased? Thinking back to the various effects of the Saintess crystal, perhaps after it was increased, the effects of the Saintess crystal would be even more powerful. When his gaze shifted to the breathtakingly beautiful woman below, there was only gentleness in Di Beichun's eyes. His Hongzhuang was different from the rest. When Di Xiaofeng noticed that Di Beichun was not in the mood to cultivate under such circumstances, he took the opportunity to tell Di Beichun what the nine-tailed Inferno Fox had said earlier. I also don't know why the nine-tailed Inferno Fox was so excited after seeing your cultivation talent. This is the first time it has taken the initiative to talk to me so much. However, I have also asked. He said that demon beasts will not possess human cultivators. However, I do not know much about this. If you are unwilling, then we will not agree. Di Xiaofeng's expression was serious. In his eyes, nothing was more important than his brother's safety. The reason why he wanted to tell Beichun about this was because he felt that this might be an opportunity. If he missed this opportunity, he might lose a chance to improve. However, based on the few words that the nine-tailed Inferno Fox had said, they were simply unable to determine whether all of this was true or false. When Di Beichun heard this news, he was also a little surprised. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox wanted him to meet a dark-attributed demonic beast. Now that he thought about it carefully, the only dark attribute demonic beasts he had seen so far were Yin She, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai. He really hadn't seen any other dark attribute demonic beasts. Most importantly, with the level of a nine-tailed Inferno Fox, its friend's strength should not be weak either. Listening to Big Brother's words, the nine-tailed inferno fox seemed to be very excited after seeing his cultivation talent. This meant that it might have been searching for a cultivator with this kind of cultivation talent for a long time, but it couldn't find one, so it couldn't hold back its excitement. Based on this point, he had to consider carefully if that demonic beast wanted to harm him. Chapter 59-58. Noticing Di Xiaofeng's nervousness, Di Beichen chuckled. That's not it. It's just that you need to think about it carefully. Of course. Di Xiaofeng nodded. You're the young master of the clan. No matter what, the most important thing is to protect yourself. You know the situation between me and the nine-tailed inferno fox. To put it bluntly, we're just partners. Once it finds a suitable opportunity, it will leave. Although it hasn't shown any hostility towards me, it's hard to know what's in a person's heart. Who knows what it's really thinking? Di Beichun felt warmth in his heart, seeing Di Xiaofeng being so considerate. Big brother, you don't have a contracted beast right now. Is it possible for the nine-tailed inferno fox to become your contracted beast? Ever since he came into contact with the immortal region, he knew that he had to go there. If his big brother became stronger, he could rest assured even if he wasn't in the clan. Once an existence like the nine-tailed inferno fox became his big brother's contracted beast, ordinary forces wouldn't dare to cause trouble. Even in the immortal region, the nine-tailed inferno fox was an abnormally strong existence, let alone in the upper realm. With such a demonic beast, it was enough for a mid-tier clan to become a large clan. Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng sighed and shook his head. If it's possible, why wouldn't I want it? Think about it. How strong is the nine-tailed inferno fox? If it wasn't for the fact that it couldn't find a suitable cultivator, it wouldn't have stayed in my body. If someone with my cultivation level could become its master, let alone it, even I would find it hard to believe. Towards the end, Di Xiaofeng felt it was funny. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of this before. Actually, from the moment the nine-tailed inferno fox resided in his body, this thought had always appeared in his mind. Previously, when the nine-tailed inferno fox used his body to deal with the Qing devil, just how powerful was that? However, he deeply understood the gap between him and the nine-tailed inferno fox. Thinking about it from another perspective, he also didn't want to. Di Beichen also understood Di Xiaofeng's thoughts. He patted the latter's shoulder, and a comforting smile appeared on his handsome face. Big brother, nothing is impossible in this world. Maybe one day, what you think is impossible will become possible. If you hadn't seen Hong Zhuang, would you have believed that a beast king would become a human's contract beast? Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng was startled, but he couldn't refute. Indeed, even a top existence like the beast king had become a contract beast. This was something that defied common sense. According to this line of thought, the nine-tailed inferno fox might not be able to become his contract beast. Take it one step at a time. No one knows the result until the end. Di Beichun smiled faintly. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. His black, jade-like eyes rippled with a bright light, as if a dusty pearl suddenly bloomed with light, bringing with it endless hope. Bailey Yinyan couldn't help but be affected by Di Xiaofeng's emotions. They were still very young. As long as they were filled with hope, nothing was impossible. I feel that Hong Zhuang's aura is rapidly increasing. I'm afraid she's about to break through again. Lin Taxing looked seriously at Bailey Hong Zhuang and the Sanus crystal. He could clearly feel that these two auras were rapidly increasing. Chapter 59-59. Lin Qianqian smiled faintly. She did not believe in the past, but now that she had seen Di Beichun and Bailey Hong Zhuang, she no longer had any doubts. When Bailey Hong Zhuang broke through, she opened her eyes. The moment she opened her eyes, everyone noticed that her eyes seemed to have turned into dazzling pearls, blooming with a resplendent brilliance. A moment later, her eyes returned to their original black color. Although it was not long, the appearance just now was deeply imprinted in everyone's hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance at that moment was like a god, without the slightest ripple of emotion. There was no complicated brilliance, only contempt and indifference. It was just a look, but was enough for everyone to remember. As Bailey Hongzhuang exited her cultivation state, the holy maiden crystal gradually stopped spinning and slowly fell into her hand. Looking at the holy maiden crystal in her hand, Bailey Hongzhuang acutely sensed that its light was even more dazzling, and the energy it contained was much stronger than before. The most important thing was that after this incident, she felt that her connection with the Saintess crystal had deepened. Previously, after obtaining the holy maiden crystal, although the holy maiden crystal had already recognized her as its master, there was still something wrong. But now, this problem had completely disappeared, and she could clearly feel that her control over the holy maiden crystal had improved. Not only that, she realized that the holy maiden crystal had many uses which she did not seem to understand before. After seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the holy maiden crystal had returned to normal, Bewitching walked to her side, his handsome face rippling with a smile like a spring breeze. "Looks like you and the holy maiden crystal have gained a lot." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "The holy maiden crystal seems to have other uses, but I have not found the right way to use it before." Although she did not understand why the Radiant Temple would cause such a change to the holy maiden crystal, she felt that the holy maiden crystal had gained the most. If it was any other place, perhaps it would take forever for the Saintess crystal to regain its current glory. Qing Devil didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would leave the state of cultivation so soon. He thought that it would take a long time. In addition, Bewitching and the others all paid attention to her. It was not difficult for him to take the opportunity to leave. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had recovered so quickly. On the contrary, he had yet to copy down all the contents on the wall. It took too much time to transcribe this obscure language. Looking at the unfinished content, he subconsciously looked at Bewitching and the others. If he didn't leave now, he might not be able to leave later. After making the decision, Qing Devil no longer hesitated. She quickly put away the copied content and rushed out of the gate of the Light Palace without hesitation. All the people present were immersed in the changes of the Holy Maiden Crystal. They did not expect that Qing Devil would take the opportunity to leave at this time. After noticing his action, they were all stunned. Xiao So was completely dumbfounded. Didn't Qing Devil say that he would go back with her? Why did he suddenly choose to leave now? This was not what they had agreed on before. Chapter 5960. Bewitching had been paying attention to Qing Devil's movements. Before the Saintess Crystal appeared, he had planned to take action against Qing Devil, because it was the best time to take action. If they were destined to be enemies in the future, it would be better to take action as soon as possible. However, when he saw that Hongzhuang had entered the state of cultivation, he put the thought aside for the time being. Once he took action, there would be a big disturbance. If Hongzhuang was involved in this, he didn't want to see that. At this moment, he was sure that Qing Devil had guessed his idea. Therefore, even if he hadn't finished copying the contents on the wall, he chose to leave. Di Xiaofeng and the others reacted very quickly. After seeing Qing Devil start to run away, they immediately chased after him. The cultivators of the Jun family were all confused. They didn't understand why their young master suddenly started to run away. Even if he wanted to run away, he should at least take them with him. What should they do now that he's suddenly left by himself? The cultivators of the Xiao family also looked at Xiao So. In this situation, they didn't know whether they should help or not. Xiao So didn't understand why Qing Devil did this, either. However, she knew that once Bewitching and the others caught Qing Devil, they would kill him without hesitation. She couldn't let Qing Devil's life be in danger. Therefore, she immediately asked the cultivators of the Xiao family to stop Bewitching and the others. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching rushed out. Bali Yanche and Linger also rushed out as fast as lightning. No matter what, they had to kill Qing Devil today. Qing Devil moved very fast, but he still clearly felt the qi behind him was getting closer and closer. In a hurry, he turned around and waved his hand casually, intending to block Bewitching's attack. However, his cultivation was not as good as Bewitching's. What's more, his hurried attack was no match for Bewitching's attack. Bang! Bewitching waved his hand fiercely, and Qing Devil's body flew backward. In the blink of an eye, everything happened in the span of a few breaths. Even though Qing Devil took the initiative, he was still hit by Bewitching's palm before he left the gate. The terrible force behind Qing Devil shook his body. He felt that his internal organs seemed to have shifted, and blood instantly flowed out from the corners of his mouth. His dark eyes were full of coldness and hatred. Qing Devil was extremely disgusted by this sudden change in status. However, such a scene was not something he could change at the moment. Kill him. Bewitching's voice was resolute and decisive. Bewitching's cold eyes were full of bloodthirsty, killing intent. This damnable fellow, his tolerance up to this point was already his limit. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were also filled with murderous intent. Earlier, they had almost all died in the hands of Azure Demon. Now, they naturally wanted revenge. Obviously, the cultivators from the other big families didn't expect to see a fight so soon. Qing Devil's escape and attack were too sudden, but it didn't stop them from enjoying the show. The grudges between the four families had lasted for so many years. Almost every time, a fight would break out, but this time it was more exciting. Chapter 59-61. Xiao Shou rushed to Qing Devil's side. Noticing that Qing Devil was injured, she couldn't help but feel distressed. She shouted at once, "Hurry up! I'll stop them." Azure Fiend was surprised when he heard the voice. However, he didn't even turn his head as he dashed out of the room. If he couldn't leave this time, then he would probably lose his life here. He was lucky in the past. Although his body was destroyed, his soul was still there. However, once he fell into the hands of Bewitching and the others, they obviously wouldn't let his soul escape. What's more, this battlefield was so dangerous. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when he would be able to leave this place again. Bailey Hongzhuang was stunned when she saw Xiao Shou, who was trying to stop Qing Devil. She immediately took action. In her eyes, this woman was also unforgivable. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang's movements were as fast as lightning, a fierce punch fiercely landing on Xiao Seiwu's body. Xiao Seiwu was suddenly sent flying in an arc in the air, falling to the ground. At the same time, Bewitching also caught up with Qing Devil. "You want to leave? It's not that easy." After realizing that Qin Haodong had caught up with him, Qing Devil's eyes flashed with a trace of sadness and coldness. "We don't have a big grudge against each other. Why do you keep pushing me?" Seeing that Qing Devil was going to use another way to get a chance to survive, Bewitching remained unmoved. "You have two choices. Do you want to do it yourself, or let me do it for you?" Qin Haodong's cold voice was unquestionable. His face was as cold as ice. He didn't give Qing Devil any chance to quibble. In his eyes, Qing Devil was doomed to die. Hearing Bewitching's words, Qing Devil's face darkened in an instant. "Do you really want to push me to this point?" Qing Devil stared at Bewitching with bloodshot eyes. His voice was terrifyingly low. "If you push me too far, you may not be able to bear the consequences. Cut the crap." Bewitching waved his sleeves. His sharp eyes were full of murderous intent. "It seems that you are waiting for me to do it myself." Bewitching didn't waste any more words. He directly attacked Qing Devil. Qing Devil didn't expect Bewitching to be like this. He didn't even give him a chance to breathe. However, Qing's attack was so fierce that he could only defend himself. At this moment, Xiao Shou had already wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and quickly walked to Azure Demon's side. During this period, all the people present knew clearly that Bewitching's cultivation had improved. Qing Devil was no match for him. Therefore, she quickly joined the battle. How could the cultivators of the Jun family and the Xiao family just stand by and watch? One by one, they joined the battle. Bewitching wanted to kill their young master. Even if they had to risk their lives, they had to protect their young master. The second young master had died in the Xianyun mystery realm. If their young master died, their families would suffer a great blow in the future. At the same time, the Di family, the Lin family, the Bailey family, the Murong family, and the Jiang family didn't stay idle. Since their young master became friends with Bewitching, they had been clear about their positions. It was undoubtedly the best choice to take advantage of this opportunity to eliminate the two opposing teams. Chapter 5962. Xiao Sudong's expression changed. Big sister, run. We are not their opponents at all. Just facing the Di family and the Lin family, they were already not their opponents. Not to mention the Murong family, the Bailey family, the Jiang family, and even the Great Devil sect. This was a complete suppression. They did not even have the strength to fight back. The cultivators of the Jun family and the Xiao family collapsed in the face of such a situation. In fact, ever since they saw Di Beichin and the others together, they had a bad premonition in their minds and were always worried that such a thing would happen. Now, the more they did not want to happen, the more it would happen. It happened so suddenly that they did not even have the time to react. Sudong, let's go. Xiao Sou completely gave up the idea of fighting after seeing the situation. With such a big disparity, it was impossible for them to win. Young master, you all leave quickly. Miss, we will hold on. You all leave quickly. The cultivators of the Jun family and the Xiao family were all prepared to die. As members of the family, protecting the safety of a young master was the most important thing. If they fell, there were other cultivators in the family who could rise up, but if the young master fell, it would be a huge blow to the entire family. When a nest is overturned, there are no eggs intact. They had no other choice. Bailey Hongzhuang coldly looked at the people blocking in front of her, her deep eyes rippling with a cold and cruel light. She understood that these people in front of her did not have a huge grudge with her, but both sides stood on different sides. No one was wrong, but no one had a way out. Because if both sides were on opposite sides, the other side would definitely not let them go. Being cruel to the opponent was being cruel to oneself. All she wanted was to protect the people she cared about. Kill. The cold voice was filled with endless killing intent. Bailey Hongzhuang held the thoughts-severing sword in her hand, and a sharp sword light came out from the tip of her sword. This was her first battle after her breakthrough, and she clearly felt how terrifying her improvement was during this period of time. Whether it was her strength or her control of spirit power, it was far from what it was in the past. A casual swing of the sword was more powerful than the sword she used all her strength to swing in the past. She wasn't the only one. Everyone was keenly aware of this. This discovery made them exceptionally excited. Blood dripped onto the ground. The faint smell of blood spread in the air and drifted into everyone's nostrils. Nangong Yuqing and the others watched as the Xiao family and the Jun family were powerless to fight back. This was a battle with a great disparity in strength. If they were to lend a hand, they would only be throwing their lives away. Ultimately, this was because Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou were not as strong as Di Beichin. If the two of them were strong enough, or if they had more friends, they would not have fallen into such a situation. Everyone could already predict that the Xiao family and the Jun family would no longer be a match for the Di family. However, just as the blood dripped onto the ground suddenly shook. The sudden turn of events attracted everyone's attention. Everyone turned their heads and heard a loud explosion in their ears. Immediately after, a huge force was transmitted over. Chapter 5963. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but everyone else also felt as if a tornado had swept past them. Without giving them any time to think, their bodies flew up uncontrollably. The wind howled, and their bodies swayed with the wind. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that the wind speed had weakened after they had been blown to a certain distance away. Then, she steadied herself and landed on the ground. The other cultivators also seized the opportunity to regain the initiative and return to the ground one after another. What's going on? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. The The sudden gust of wind was obviously beyond their expectations and completely ruined their plan. Bewitching turned his eyes to a place not far away and found that the shining light had disappeared. He immediately understood what had happened. The statue of light has disappeared. This gust of wind should be sending us out. As Bewitching's voice fell, everyone turned their heads to look. Sure enough, the statue of light and the statue of darkness had disappeared as if they had never appeared. I see. Everyone finally understood. They just didn't expect the timing to be so coincidental. It would have been best if they had killed the Qing devil and Xiao Shou. However, when the gust of wind came, everyone's foothold was different. In addition, the Qing devil would definitely try to escape as soon as possible. It would not be easy for them to catch up with him. What a pity, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. They missed such a good opportunity. Qing devil was cunning. If he went back, she was afraid that he would not come out in short time. No matter what, they had to solve this problem before they went to the immortal realm. Otherwise, they would not feel at ease leaving. Di Xiaofeng and Lin Taxing both looked disappointed. Speaking of which, they had been holding a grudge against the Jun family for many years. They had always hoped to solve the problem once and for all. This was such a good opportunity. They did not expect that the Scourge would have a chance to escape after living for thousands of years. Seeing that everyone was in low spirits, Lin Qianqian said, "No matter what, we've dealt a heavy blow to the Jun family and the Xiao family's troops. Many cultivators have died. No matter if it's the trip to the Immortal Cloud's secret realm or this trip to the ancient battlefield, they've suffered heavy losses. We still have a great advantage." Everyone nodded one after another, especially the cultivators from the families who had been training together over the years. In the past, when they faced the Jun family, there were many times when they were evenly matched. Even if they had the upper hand, it was completely unlike now, where they had the absolute upper hand. In the past 2 years, ever since the appearance of the young master and young madam, even with the addition of the Xiao clan, they still had the absolute upper hand. Other than being beaten up, the other party had no other way to deal with them. In short, during this period of time, they were really elated. Let's go. There are still other cultivators who have probably drifted further away. We have to meet up with them first. Bewitching looked at the number of cultivators around him. It was obvious that some of them were not here. The gust of wind was so sudden that everyone controlled it at different times. Naturally, the location where it landed was also different. Unknowingly, they had been in the ancient battlefield for a while. He vaguely felt that the inheritance of the Divine Hall of Light was the ultimate inheritance. Chapter 5964. Not only Bewitching, but almost everyone had this thought in their minds. They had been here for a long time. What's more, they had already been to the places marked on the map. It was probably meaningless to continue to stay here. That's true, but we don't even know where the exit is. Linny looked around blankly. When they first came in, it was a very secret exit. Everyone appeared in different places under random teleportation. The ancient battlefield was different from the Immortal Cloud's secret realm. The Immortal Cloud's secret realm was a place of experience that all major forces knew very well. After entering, they could clearly understand where the exit was. However, in this ancient battlefield, they had not found the location of the exit until now. Everyone looked at each other. In fact, this point had been hovering in everyone's mind for a long time, but every time they thought about it, they couldn't figure out the answer. Now that Linny mentioned it, everyone was also at a loss. It seems that we have to look around for the exit. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. She always had such an idea in her mind, but she felt that the exit might appear after the time was up. But so far, no exit had been found. Thinking about how Qing Devil and Nine-Tailed Inferno Fox had been trapped in the ancient battlefield for so long, it was very scary in itself. They couldn't be trapped here too. Otherwise, it would be really troublesome. Everyone nodded. Now, everyone was no longer thinking about looking for the inheritance. The harvest this time was already very rich. What they needed to do was to return to the family. Everyone moved forward all the way. In fact, they were the cultivators who landed earlier while the other cultivators were behind. The gust of wind was extremely violent. Even if it wrapped many cultivators, it still swept toward the back quickly. Even though they didn't stay in the wind for long, they had already traveled a long distance. Therefore, the other family cultivators were far away at this moment. As everyone gradually moved forward, they encountered some cultivators along the way. Of course, some of these cultivators were from their team, and some are from other forces. Almost everyone was scattered in this gust of wind, scattered to different places. The stronger the cultivators stopped earlier, while the weaker cultivators stayed closer to the back. Before long, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others met up with Murong Jing, Jiang Wenyan, and Chen Feng. They also saw Chu Yingming, Nangong Yuqing, and the others. However, they did not see Qing Devil and Xiao Sou. These two fellows are quite smart. They must have used the wind speed to hide at the back. Lin Taxing's eyes narrowed slightly. His resolute face carried a trace of complexity and unwillingness. He really hoped that he could meet these two guys in the process, so that he could completely end the grudges of many years. Unfortunately, these two fellows were as cunning as foxes. Perhaps he would only have a chance to deal with them after he returned. It must be Qing Devil's idea, Bewitching said. That's right. Xiao Sou doesn't have such a brain. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Compared to Jun Lingxuan, Qing Devil was undoubtedly much smarter. This was the reason why they had been quite afraid of him. Chapter 5965. In the process of searching, everyone also noticed the cultivators from the Xiao and Jun families. They also had no intention of letting these guys go. Since they were destined to be opponents, they must get rid of them. As the cultivators from the families gradually converged, there was only one thought left in everyone's minds, and that was to leave this place. After leaving the families for so long, everyone was already looking forward to going back. The D family. Xiao Wanrong could not help but look at the entrance of the D family every day. Unknowingly, Di Beichin and the others had already gone out to train for several months. Until now, there had been no news at all. It was originally an unfamiliar place, and no one knew what kind of risks there would be inside. If there was any danger, she simply did not dare to think about it. "Mother, you're looking again." Lin Yinqing looked at the longing expression on Xiao Wanrong's face and felt a little distressed. Xiao Wanrong put away the worry in her heart and turned to look at Lin Yinqing, who had recovered her spirit, and said with a smile, "Aren't you the same as me, often coming here to watch?" The elders' hearts are all the same. Seeing that her thoughts were directly exposed by Xiao Wanrong, Lin Yinqing was also a little helpless, but she still nodded and admitted, "Yes, I know that they will often go out to train, but every time they leave, I can't help but worry." As a member of an aristocratic family, she was actually very familiar with the norm of death, but even so, she still could not maintain a calm heart, because that was someone she cared about. Hongzhuang's mother is the same. Although she has been cultivating, I noticed that she often comes out to take a look. She must be missing Hongzhuang. Xiao Wanrong sighed. They all had the same thoughts. This time, they have gone out to train for a long time. Logically speaking, they should be back soon. Lin Yinqing looked into the distance. Every day, she was looking forward to Beichin and the others returning safely. Only when she saw that they were safe with her own eyes could she be at ease. Actually, these children are very outstanding. I believe that they will come back safely. Xiao Wanrong's voice was a little more firm, and she did not know whether she was comforting herself or Lin Yinqing. Do the cultivators from the upper realm spend so much time training outside? Mu Lingbing's face was full of worry. They had been gone for so long, and there had been no news at all. How could she not be worried? Lan Yinxiao looked at Mu Lingbing's nervous expression and comforted her. "I heard that the last time they went out to train, it was an entire year. This time, it hasn't even been a year, so you don't have to worry too much. Didn't you say that the place we're going to this time has never appeared before? Who knows what's happening inside?" Mu Lingbing frowned. "I've noticed that Yun Qing often comes out to watch. She must be hoping that they'll come back soon." When children grow up, they will have their own world. Experience is also a path that they must take. I have confidence in Beichin and Hong Zhuang. They have always been outstanding. Yu Linfeng had a smile on his face. He couldn't be more satisfied with his disciple. How many cultivators from the lower realm came to the upper realm? The fact that these two little fellows had already carved out such a path at such a young age was already something that many of their peers could not compare to. Chapter 59-66. Looking at Yu Linfeng's confident appearance, the originally gloomy atmosphere immediately became much more relaxed. I agree with Linfeng's words. Hong Zhuang and Beichun are truly outstanding. I don't think there are many in the upper realm who are their match, Situ Yin said with a smile. Father, aren't you being too confident? Mu Lingbing looked at Situ Yin, her lips curling into a smile. How many cultivators are there in the upper realm? Their cultivation resources are much more abundant than Hong Zhuang and the rest. So what? Situ Yin didn't care at all. In any case, in my opinion, they're the most outstanding. Mu Lingbing shook her head helplessly. She could tell from Situ Yan's expression how much he doted on his two children. Because he loved them too much, he thought they were the strongest and no one could compare to them. Don't worry. Have you forgotten about Hong Zhuang's chaos ring? Lan Yunxiao chuckled. With this divine artifact, they can usually keep their lives. After witnessing the miraculous effects of the chaos ring, he understood that it was a life-saving weapon. If they really couldn't handle it, they could just hide in the chaos ring. As a divine artifact, the space inside was extremely stable. Generally speaking, there wouldn't be any problems. It was because of this that he wasn't so worried. Otherwise, as a father, he would be worried as well. That's true. Mu Lingbing felt a little more at ease. She had been so worried that she had completely forgotten about this. You can cultivate in peace. Otherwise, when Hong Zhuang and the rest return and we realize that our cultivation is much lower than theirs, it would be embarrassing. Mu Jin chuckled. She had heard some news about the ancient battlefield. Since many cultivators could quickly break through before it even opened, the rewards would definitely be bountiful. She believed that when Hong Zhuang and the rest returned, their strength would definitely increase greatly. After Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others moved forward, suddenly, they vaguely felt a force of attraction coming from the front. Noticing this force, everyone immediately looked at each other, and then quickened their pace and rushed forward. Although the attraction was very obvious, when everyone rushed over, they found that the distance was still very far. After walking for a few hours, they finally arrived at their destination. Joy surfaced on everyone's faces as they looked at the exit that was covered by the fog in front of them. What they were most worried about was being trapped here and not being able to get out. But now, they could finally leave this place. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Thinking that they could return to their families, they couldn't help but feel happy. Now, I can finally rest assured. Di Xiaofeng smiled. I don't know how long I've been in the ancient battlefield. It's time to go back. Since the exit has appeared, there's no need to hesitate. Let's leave quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the exit. They had already received the most fortunate baptism in the ancient battlefield and had no regrets. As for when the light god statue and the darkness god statue would appear next time, no one knew. Di Beichin immediately arranged for the Di family's cultivators to walk towards the exit one by one. He instructed, "Gather at the exit and wait for us to arrive." Yes. Chapter 59-67. I didn't expect the Qing devil to leave with Jun Lingxuan's body in the end. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. This guy was really a headache. Don't think like that. Maybe this is an opportunity given to us by God. Di Xiaofeng smiled faintly. Don't forget that we still have our family's inheritance. Jun Lingxuan's younger brother is already dead. Now, the one with the strongest bloodline in their family is him. If Jun Lingxuan is also dead, it will be a bit troublesome to open the inheritance. Maybe God wants us to open the inheritance, so he let Jun Lingxuan live a little longer. That's right. Although Junling Xuan is already dead, the Qing devil has taken over his body. The bloodline power is still the same. Di Beichen replied. Perhaps this was the only consolation. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. In fact, she was really curious about what the family's realm of inheritance was. For this realm of inheritance, they had already thought of many ways. They hoped that they could open it after returning this time. For the secret of the three great families, she also wanted to test whether her and Beichen's bloodline could open this realm of inheritance. If they could, then they just had to think of a way to get the Xiao and Jun family's secret keys. This way, they wouldn't have to be suppressed by these two families in the future. However, just as Di Xiaofeng was about to pass through the entrance, the nine-tailed inferno fox's voice suddenly sounded. "No, I can't go out." Di Xiaofeng was stunned. He asked in confusion why. "I'm a monster from the immortal region, and I came to this battlefield. There are restrictions on this battlefield. I can't leave at all." The nine-tailed inferno fox's voice suddenly became heavy. It had stayed in this battlefield for so many years and couldn't find a way to leave. Now that it finally found the exit, as long as it left here, it could live like before. However, when Di Xiaofeng approached the exit, it felt a terrifying force suppressing it. As long as it dared to try to enter the entrance, it was almost certain that it would instantly turn into powder and cease to exist. Then what should we do? Di Xiaofeng was also dumbfounded. He had promised the nine-tailed inferno fox that he would take it away, but he didn't expect the exit to be right in front of them, and the nine-tailed inferno fox couldn't enter. "I don't know either." The nine-tailed inferno fox sank into deep thought. Originally, when it saw the cultivators from the upper realm accidentally entering this place, it thought that it finally saw the hope of leaving. However, it never thought that the restriction had always existed. As long as the restriction existed, he would not be able to leave. Di Beichun suddenly said, "You can't leave my big brother's body, but if you become my big brother's contracted beast and enter the contracted space, will you be able to leave?" Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. That should be possible. It was natural for cultivators to leave with their contracted beasts. Di Xiaofeng's eyes also changed slightly, and his heartbeat suddenly became violent. He never had a contracted beast because he couldn't find a suitable one, and he didn't want to waste this opportunity. Until he saw the nine-tailed inferno fox, he hoped to make it his contracted beast. However, he also knew that the difference in strength between them was too great, so he gave up on this idea. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.